as I was saying, historians have long asserted that the Dark Ages came before the Renaissance, but new evidence seems to suggest that the Renaissance came before the Dark Ages.
Tapestry is a civilization game all about the progression of time. Players each start with one of 16 unique civilizations that gives them a special power. Throughout the game, you play through 4 different eras, 3 of which are affected by a tapestry card that you'll play from your hand, which will give you some immediate or era-long effect. The thematic and mechanical union of these bear out the story of your civilization, or your tapestry. Ultimately, your story and your game ends when you reach the dawn of your 5th era, by which time your capital city will have blossomed with buildings representing great achievements and assets that provide you income. You'll have climbed the rungs of 4 different advancement tracks representing science, technology, exploration, and military development. And finally, once all players have reached the dawn of their 5th age, the civilization with the most points wins. On paper, this game is pretty straightforward, and it is, but also it kind of isn't. So on your turn, you will always be either taking an income turn where you are putting a card down to progress your civilization into a brand new era and collecting a bunch of resources and points and stuff, or you are going to be more often moving your cube up one of these tracks by paying the resource costs and then performing the action listed on the new space that you just moved into. The reason why I say you're going to be doing that much more often is because, like I said earlier, you're only going to be playing through 4 eras of your civilization. Once you hit the 5th income round of the game, which your very first turn is one of those, then you are done. You are out for the rest of the game, your final points are calculated, and everyone else keeps on playing until they hit the beginning of their 5th age. So forget what you know about rounds in games. I mean, sure, each of the eras is kind of like their own rounds, but those rounds apply to you and you alone. So back to moving up the tracks. Here's the other tricky part of the game. In most games, you'll have standard actions where if you want to conquer, research, or explore, you just pay some resources and carry out the action. Not here, because you are only ever performing the actions associated with the space upon moving into those spaces. It means that, for example, if there are only 7 spaces on the military track that have conquer as a potential action without the aid of other card effects, which may happen, those are the only times that you can guarantee that you are going to be able to conquer. Thus, timing is key, and judicious use of your actions as resources is a huge part of this game, and that is really awesome. Each track has its own specialty and resource type associated with it. Each stage of the track costs progressively more or more specific resources, and it's easy to see how going up a track synergizes with its previous effects. Exploration starts by giving you tiles, which with future actions will be put out next to territories you control, which will eventually lead to placing your tiles anywhere to, oh god, suddenly we have space tiles and are exploring space for amazing rewards! And yeah, each track has a unique but similarly interesting progression. In general, exploration gives you resources for placing new territories, which are now available to conquer. Military allows you to conquer those territories, rolling dice, which give you points and resources. You can conquer other players' territories, knocking over their tower. They don't lose anything out of the deal, aside from no longer controlling the area for a few game purposes, but no more than 2 towers can be in a space, so it becomes a locked region on the board. Technology grants cards, which advance in between ages and can have a myriad of effects when advanced to their mid or complete stage, and science increases the rate in which you advance along other tracks, often based on the green 12-sided dice of glory with equal proportions of the 4 tracks on its sides. Look, there are so many different actions in this game, and for the most part, they all seem broadly useful, but also situationally very powerful. And they're always providing you points or resources or cards. It gives you a lot of choices, and it starts to feel explosively synergistic. During your first age, you'll take a few actions and gain a couple points. During your final age, you may be taking turns where like 4 or 5 things happen at once, and you end up gaining loads of points at a time. And it all feels very, very good. And now's the part where you may be like, yo, with so many different actions that you could be taking, this sounds wildly complicated. And you know what? This may be the most genius part about Tapestry. Tapestry is loaded with choices, but always your turn is basically one of 5 choices. Sure, knowledge of what's to come is important, but the game symbology becomes quickly intuitive, and what is actually a very complex network of actions and synergy becomes very manageable, approachable, and fun. Another highlight of the game is the diversity, and yeah, diverse representation of people is important, and this game does a really good job of it, but I'm actually talking about the gameplay diversity, the way that your eras will play out due to your civilization, as well as the tapestry cards that you play. I mean, looking at the civilizations to start with, you have these mundane and also wild effects that can come as a result of these. I mean, you have the leaders who give you a bump up a different track at the beginning of every era. Then you have the nomads who they get to fortify their locations in ways that other civilizations don't, and you're actually putting your buildings on the board itself. And then you have really crazy ones like the futurists who actually start at the second stage of each of the different upgrade tracks. That is wild because you have access to some of the much more advanced actions earlier in the game, but also as a consequence of that, you're going to have to pay a lot more resources because every step is that much more expensive, and you may be missing out on those foundational early actions that could have been really important. This is going to have a big effect on you. And the same is true of the tapestry cards. Each feels important, unique, and like it'll have a big impact on your upcoming era. In fact, almost everything in the game feels interconnected and wonderfully important. Almost everything. If I were to boil down the marketing strategy for Tapestry, it'd be a 2-hour Civ game, 4-page rulebook, consequential actions, and man, look at these rad buildings. I think all these things are great, and before I get into it, yes, these buildings are rad in every game I've played. People covet them enough that their ownership is a driving factor in the game, but fundamentally, they are just trophies, Civ game blue ribbon rewards. If you are the first person to advance on a track to a new stage, marking more powerful and more expensive actions, you also claim the associated building, which goes into your capital board. Additionally, many effects will have you placing income buildings onto your capital, revealing spots that give you more points and resources every income turn. Your capital is divided into 9 squares of 9 spaces with orange dots that cannot be covered up. If all empty spaces in one of the 9 subsections is filled with stuff, you get a resource of your choice, and some of the income turn point rewards will give you points for entire rows and columns completed on the board. That's it. No cool ongoing power from the building, no limiting other players' access to advanced actions, just covering up more space on the capital board. In reality, placing this tiny hut revealing a new income space has a more impacting effect than this awesome mega complex, but it does sure look cool. Look, I'm happy that these buildings are in the game. I think they look great, provide immersion, and give a sense of accomplishment, and there are some Civ and Tapestry effects that can trigger when obtaining one, and getting an extra resource by covering a huge amount of capital space at a critical time can make a big impact on the game. But for how much of a centerpiece they are actually one of the least consequential things among the whole board. So, final thoughts. Each game I've played of Tapestry has had me thinking more and more about Tapestry. See, the first game, I was like, this is kind of weird, but also kind of cool. And then I was like, oh man, now I am getting this. To then getting to the point where I was reveling about all the different combinations and possibilities, so much so that I genuinely started dreaming about this game. That doesn't happen often to me. It's weird. There's a lot to love here. It's beautiful to look at, the components are superb, it feels very inventive and wildly different, but becomes intuitive as you play. And best of all, it has a really big game impact in a more medium weight shell. That said, that intuitive nature can wear off. If you aren't the type of person who loves engine building into some mega machine that manages 4 different synergizing powers popping off at once, you still might get overwhelmed. Also, this is a game where some poor decision making, or yes, there's even the potential for some really bad luck where you draw into tapestry cards that just don't quite work with anything that you've been working towards, and it can leave that engine floundering, and you can end up finishing a good 20 minutes before everyone else, watching as their points fly by. Finally, this is not a confrontational game at all. Care Bears or Joyce, but if you are wanting your Civ game to be all about bashing your opponents with wooden clubs and nuclear warheads, even conquesting feels like a gentle nudge. Competitive, yes. Confrontational, no.
I really, really like this game. I mean, like I said, it's invaded my sleep. I've had a blast playing it again and again, trying different tracks, emphasizing different strategies, playing with the different combinations of civilizations and the tapestry cards. And while that does lead to a degree of unpredictability, there's just a satisfaction that comes up with doing what you do the best and really leaning into that. And that's personally gratifying, especially if you're not particularly great at every game that you play. I've enjoyed it at both big and small player counts, and it's been fairly easy to teach. Oh, speaking of big and small player counts, the solo mode in this game is at first kind of a bear to wrap your brain around, but then becomes really fluid and is totally a fantastic way to play this game. I'll have a separate review addendum for that, so stay tuned. And yeah, that is our review. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald, and I just want to play more of this game.
If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcasts, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.